Warning. The Maverick Marketer is not for the soft, timid, or faint-hearted. If you need permission or seek approval from your mother, spouse, mates in the pub, or anyone else for that matter, this really isn't for you. If any of what you've heard puts you off in the slightest, I advise you not to listen any further. You've been warned. Prepare yourself for the no bullshit, zero fluff. Quick, dirty, and uncensored secrets for any serious coach, trainer, consultant, or speaker who wants to earn more money with less work and fewer headaches. Without having to kiss ass or bend over backwards to please anyone. He's a relentless and fearless renegade who will stop at nothing to reveal the harsh, unforgiving, and brutal truth about what it really takes to succeed in this business. He's a guy people love to hate and hate to love. It's your host, Drew Edwards. The Maverick Marketer is Unleashed.
Well, hello, this is Drew Edwards here from EliteClientAttraction.com and the Maverick Marketer Unleashed.com, and welcome to another episode of the Maverick Marketer Unleashed podcast. I'm joined by Terry. Terry, how are you?
Fantastic, thank you.
Good stuff. And we have as well with us today Matt Handshakin Holmes. Matt, how are you?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
So Matt, again, just for anyone that doesn't know you, doesn't know who you are, can you tell us, just give us a sort of brief intro as to who you are and what you do now?
Sure. My name is Matt Holmes. I'm founder of the Handshakin video series, where we interview top entrepreneurs on networking and personal branding strategies.
Awesome. Good stuff. And tell us a bit more about your background. How did you actually get into doing what you do now?
Sure. So I got into entrepreneurship at an early age. Just after studying my master's in business, I had about $100,000 of student loans and thought that would be a good time to launch my first company, a residential real estate company where we bought single-family homes with investors that were out of state. I live here in Colorado, and the real estate was getting hot and is still pretty hot today. That was back in 2010 when I bought my first house, but after I stopped stressing about the money and could actually pay myself with that company, I realized I wasn't happy at all. So I sold off the real estate and started interviewing people for about 12 months on, you guessed it, the Handshakin video series. It started with just a few friends, got a first venture capitalist on the video series, and then eventually billionaires and members of Congress on all the things they do in common when it comes to networking and branding themselves as an expert. And after 12 months of doing that, we recently launched a service alongside our business to help create content for other entrepreneurs so they can network better and they can have a strong personal brand.
But what made you actually get into the networking and brand? Of all things you could have got into, why this? Huh?
You know, that's a good question. After real estate, I was sick of being burdened by basements flooding and tenants not paying rent. So when I sold off part of the real estate, I bought myself a financial runway to kind of explore what was next. And I just sat down with people who I was attracted to their careers. I liked what they were doing. I wanted to be like them. And I started interviewing them. And as I did more and more interviews, I realized that networking and personal branding were really the questions that I was asking about.
Oh, I see, yeah. So you sort of, you found that there was a theme there.
Exactly.
Awesome. So, tell us a bit more about sort of the networking side and the branding side of things. Why is it so important for entrepreneurs, business owners, people that want to be perceived as experts?
Yeah, networking is the number one place entrepreneurs should start, and there's a couple of reasons because why that's the truth. Is in 2016 and 2017, the number one thing that you can do without a warm introduction is you can actually get yourself on anyone's screen. Talking billionaires from Shark Tank or any of your mentors that you really look up to that are too busy to email you back, you can find ways to get your face and your name on their screen without needing to know one of their friends. Now, of course, if you're friends with one of their friends, ask for a warm introduction, ask for an email introduction and endorsement so you can meet with them. But if you can't, you can get creative and find lots of different ways to get yourself on their computer screen, on their phone screen, and once they start to get a little bit more familiar with you, you can sit down with them. Having a strong network is important because when you connect with key influencers, they can help you with exposure when you launch your product. Connecting with high caliber entrepreneurs who have done it before are important because when you need feedback on your idea, they can give you instant feedback. Hopefully you can text them instead of even email them. It's all about bringing them in close to your personal life, bringing your professional contacts close into your personal life. Because the people you catch happy hour with care a lot more about your success than the person you met one time in an office for a coffee.
Yeah, good point. Good point. But just before we go on, because I'm going to get some real clarifications, how would you define networking? What's your definition of networking, Matt?
That's a good question, and surprisingly, I don't get asked that as much as I'd expect. But I think it can be a lot of different things. You know, some people think networking, and they think they have a very negative connotation. They think, you know, they're at an event and the salesperson is shoving business cards down their throat, and it can be really unpleasant. They can also think an event where they're not in the space of similar people and that nothing really helps their business or them as a human. And then there's the other side of networking, which is more the personal branding side, where you're really putting a lot of content out there. You're trying to be transparent and authentic and look like an expert online. And that kind of attracts the right people to you, because when you do that, people can understand in an instant what you're about, what you're interested in, and you know, how long you've been doing that. And if it overlaps with them, they might just sit down with you. That's what happened when I emailed the billionaire founder of Priceline.com, Jeff Hoffman. I didn't have a warm introduction. I just added him on LinkedIn, shot him a message, told him, hey, host a video series, wanted to interview you about your success. I think you'd be a good guest because we have these things in common. You're about networking, you're about humility, you're about paying it forward. That's what all my other guests have. Can we sit down for an interview? He said, sure thing, Matt. And then the day of the interview, him and I are texting on where to meet. We were interviewing at a hotel while he was in town here in Colorado. And yeah, personal branding can help you kind of pull the right people to you online, or leverage the people that you're meeting, leverage your credibility with the people you're meeting in person, and both are very powerful. Where the first thing I mentioned, if you're going to events without a purpose, without direction, if you don't have a strong personal brand, you might end up wasting your time, and you might end up talking to people who you don't have anything in common with, and that's not the goal of networking.
Yeah.
No, and we've all attended those kind of events, Matt, unfortunately. So,
yes, yeah.
Totally get that. Just to carry on this, so your interviews, they're done face to face, are they, Matt?
Exactly. So one of the reasons I chose to go with the Handshakin video series is the handshake is something that you have to do in person. Connecting with people online is great, but it's really once you meet them in person and shake their hand face to face where you're actually going to start a true relationship where they care about your success and you care about theirs as well. That's simply how humans work. You know, before I studied business, I had studied psychology, so I'm particularly interested in this type of stuff. And you know, it's the people that you spend time with in person that you care about the most, and that's why it's important to sit down with these people rather than just, you know, email back and forth with them a little bit.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, over to you, Drew.
Yeah, awesome. Matt, I just want to break up the interview a little bit just to let our audience get to know you a bit better. Can you tell us one thing about you which most people don't know, so an interesting or funny story?
One thing I don't promote too much is I actually broke a world record earlier this year.
Wow.
I have it, and I think there's two reasons I don't promote it. Number one, even though I push a lot of content out there, it's just me trying to be authentic and transparent, and I try not to come across as boastful. You know, no one wants to listen to that, and that can be really tricky. But the other reason I also don't promote it is it's not any type of epic world record. I mean, it was pretty grueling, but it was the world's longest handshake, so I found it. And what that means is that I found one friend, and him and I had to shake hands for. We're hoping Guinness just got our evidence recently. It's a big process to send in the evidence, and then of course have them review it. So we're expecting to hear back from them, hopefully this month or next. Either way, we got covered by 10 news sources out here in the States, from local to national, and we shook hands for about 46 hours straight before you deduct breaks. Of course, you have to have breaks to use the bathroom. That's usually, people ask about that. You do get breaks to use the bathroom, although you don't want to take too many, because being awake shaking hands 46 hours, we were a bit awake about 50 hours, which after 36 hours, there can be some health consequences, and after 48 hours, we had to bring we brought a doctor in a little bit before 48 hours to really make sure nothing was getting messed up, kind of staying up that late with energy drinks and staying in one location and having constant movement in one arm. But we did it.
Matt, I've got to ask a question. What was the previous world record? I'm fascinated.
Yes. So after you deduct breaks, the previous world record was 42.5 hours, and we are expecting to hold the world record at 43.5 hours. We broke it by 1 hour.
Congratulations and well done.
Thank you.
What made you want to do that, Matt?
I think bucket list. Everyone has things they want to do. When I get married and have kids, it's probably going to be a lot harder to lay aside a whole weekend to do this. Yeah. And I just, one day I was like, if I'm going to break a world record, I should try to do something that gets me a little bit more exposure and views on my videos. So what's something that could be fun, that isn't going to get me killed, and is doable? Something that's not impossible, because a lot of them are. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of Googling, looking on GuinnessWorldRecords.com, and found this one and said, wow, that's a long time, but I think I want to look into breaking that. And I did. We trained for several months. And
well, stop. You trained for months.
Yeah. So what I mean by training is, the first weekend we just tried to stay awake for, 42 hours. Not 50 like we actually did. We just tried to stay awake for 42 hours, and I didn't. I fell asleep after like 20, 28, 30 hours. And my partner made it to about 40, but neither one of us could even stay awake 42 hours. And what we concluded from that was we really need some support from friends in the community when this is going on, and that's totally what allowed us to do it. Staying awake that long, you are hit by fatigue in a mean way multiple times, and if you're not surrounded by people in community who are supporting you and cheering you on, the energy level runs low and you're not going to break the world record. But thankfully, 24/7 for those 46 hours that we were shaking hands, before breaks, of course. We were watching the timer before deducting breaks, so I keep saying 46. But there's people there nonstop, and that was a big help. That would have been really difficult without them.
Yeah.
And sorry, Terry.
You go on.
Just on that, Matt. I mean, you talked about the importance of having a community around you to help you sort of break the world record. I mean, do you think the same thing applies to business? Do you think it's important to surround yourself with people that are supporting you on your business journey?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked that question. Absolutely. Community is one of the first places that entrepreneurs should start, right? You network at a couple different events face to face, and you meet your tribe. And once you start to hang out with your tribe, you become part of that community, and hopefully pretty soon after you lead that community. Once you lead even if it's a very small community, if it has any type of niche or space, relevancy, commonalities, that starts to brand you as an expert in that space, and then you can reach out to a bigger, more qualified, older, more wealthier oftentimes community, and that's kind of how you start the networking process as an entrepreneur to meet people that normally you wouldn't meet until you actually had a profitable business. But trust me, if you meet them beforehand, they're going to give you that advice. They're going to give you those contacts to get there a lot faster.
Mm. Yeah. And what sort of the common mistakes that business people make when it comes to networking, Matt?
Oh gosh, that's a fun one. I've blogged about that a couple different times, so check out my blog at handshakin.com/blog. Just search for mistakes. You'll find a couple good articles. But I think most of the mistakes come down to one common lesson that almost all my guests have told me in one way or another. And the one thing they all have in common, including billionaires, is that they give first. They help others without ever expecting anything in return. So the way that translates into the way that would translate into a mistake at a networking event is the first thing you do when you meet someone is you say, "Hey, my name is Matt. I'm founder of the Handshakin video series where we create content for entrepreneurs. Here's my card. Let me know if you need content for your personal brand," without me ever asking them, "Hey, what do you do?" Maybe they're not interested in having a personal brand. Maybe they're not entrepreneurial. And so I'm just blurting information out without listening. And if I listen first, I can give them some free help, whether that's my service or not, and not expect anything in return if I if I just give them some free help on, if I send them a referral that helps them out and affects their bottom line, and I never expect anything in return, that's something that all my past guests would have done.
Yeah, and it reminds me of the story of, if you go along to your doctor, let's say you've got a sore throat, a bit of a cold, and you walk into the doctor's surgery, and the doctor then says to you, okay, get behind that screen and take all your clothes off. Now, the doctor doing that without asking you a few questions first of all would probably get struck off for malpractice. And I think the same applies to business people if they launch into what they do without first establishing what the client does and what the client's needs are. So that's a really good point there, Matt. Really good point.
Yeah, big time. And you can never know what benefits will come from helping someone, even if they're not going to be a client today. I mean, I was just talking with a gal who's the founder of a company called Havenly. They just hit 40 full-time employees. She's been killing it, and I asked her, what is it that makes you want to give back to an entrepreneur like me? I'm not your target client. And she said, well, there's two reasons that entrepreneurs want to give back. Is number one, it helps them with exposure. It helps their bottom line. They need to be able to put food on the table, or they need to be able to pay their employees to put food on the table. Number two, it's an altruistic reason. They relate with you somehow, and then they want to give back for that reason. And that's the same thing when you're networking. Someone's going to want to help you for one of those two reasons, and it's the people who have a strong altruistic calling that you want to surround yourself with.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, really good point there, Matt.
Thanks.
Matt, what advice would you give to somebody who is listening to you now, is understanding the importance of networking, or perhaps knew it already, but they're not good at speaking to people. They're perhaps an introvert, perhaps a little bit shy. So meeting new people isn't something they find comfortable. What advice would you give to someone like that?
Yeah, that's a good one. I gotta see if I can pull up my blog post. I wrote a blog post I'm really proud of about networking for introverts, and because it's very different. It comes natural to some extroverts, and for introverts sometimes it can be a little bit more tricky. But I think the big advantage that introverts have, before I get into any of the tips, is that they're usually pay a little bit more attention to detail than us extroverts. So oftentimes I'll blurt things out that are come across abrasive, or not quite as well as it could. And introverts oftentimes, I think they should start with their online brand. If you look strong online, people are automatically going to think and feel a certain way about you, assuming they saw your content online, which if you're in the same communities and you're publishing relevant content consistently, they will, and that makes it a lot easier for them, because then people just have questions for them, and it kind of encourages other people to carry the conversation, if carrying the conversation is something that doesn't come as naturally to you as an introvert.
Yeah.
But I'll make sure to send you guys the link to my introverts blog, and we can put that in the description. I've gotten some pretty good feedback from it.
Awesome.
So in terms of targeting yourself, Matt, who do you target specifically? In terms, I get it's business owners, but is it a particular size? Is it a particular location? Is it nationwide? I mean, who do you target?
Yeah, I mean, originally for the first 12 months when I was interviewing people, I was shooting for the stars. I wanted to get every venture capitalist and billionaire. I got the lieutenant governor here in Colorado. I wanted to get everyone in Colorado. And then after I achieved that goal, I started going national. I started flying around interviewing guests, trying to get billionaires, members of Congress out in Washington, D.C. if they weren't on recess, and just anyone. I wanted to go for the highest caliber person. Obviously, what would affect my video series the most is people who had huge followings, where they would then share the content, and I could hopefully dip into their fan base. But even outside of that, even if they didn't have a strong following, I still wanted to talk with some of these people. One of my favorite guests earlier on was a CEO of a company called Ping Identity, and he had 350 full-time employees. This guy had an ID on a napkin, and now his company is paying the salary of people of 350 people. You can't even know everyone's name in your company, and that just blew my mind that an idea had been executed and so well played that he couldn't possibly know the name of every person that his idea was putting food on the table for.
I've got to ask, Matt, before you go on, what was the idea? What's the business?
Ping Identity does a lot of different things around privacy. It's a B2B company around privacy and security for companies. If you guys are familiar with LastPass, LastPass is a tool where it helps an individual organize all their passwords. I know that's something they helped with in the B2B space too, kind of organizing your passwords across all employees and all the different platforms that businesses use.
Oh, right, yeah, great idea, yeah.
Yeah.
So initially you started off with the real big boys, and now who do you target now?
So it got selfish, Let me just be honest with you here. I think entrepreneurship is a journey to humility, and the more humble an entrepreneur can get, the better they can help other people, the better they can listen to their employees, the better they can grow a business. And when I was starting out, I thought I was humble. I was asking other people about their success, not trying to talk about any success that I thought I had with a real estate company. And the type of people I met, well, it's just that I didn't really have much success at all with the real estate company. I put food on the table for myself and almost a full-time employee here or there, but it was never a huge business. And I think that I got carried away. I couldn't believe that someone my age, without having much sales with this business, could sit down with billionaires. And I got a little bit seduced by that. So our viewership wasn't growing. I was meeting some cool people, but we weren't really paying it forward and providing value for our viewers. Where when I hired my first full-time employee, the first thing she said was, Matt, you gotta stop thinking about you and the guests, and come up with more actionable tips. We'd always ask for the action item at every single interview, so the viewers could know something, strategic or actionable that would help them. But we weren't doing that enough. Sometimes I just get carried away in conversation, like it was an in-person meeting. And the fact of the matter is, when I'm creating a video interview, I need to make something short that people have attention for. People have more attention for in-person meetings than watching a video online. So we had to adapt to that, and now our videos are broken up into 4 or 5 short, more consumable videos, where before they were long videos from 15 to 45 minutes. Ain't nobody got time for that.
You're listening to Maverick Marketer Unleashed podcast. For show notes, additional resources, and podcast updates, head over to www.maverickmarketerunleashed.com.
Matt, tell me a bit more about your business. What have been some of the biggest mistakes and challenges that you've made, either recently or in the past, and how did you overcome it?
I think the biggest one was definitely, kind of looking inward rather than outward, was not being humble. We were just talking about, so now the changes we've kind of made in our business, along with the service that I mentioned earlier on, is how we're trying to fix one of the mistakes that I made earlier. I was creating all these videos without knowing where to drive people with them. I was creating all these videos being more excited about who I was meeting versus how they could provide value to the client, the entrepreneur watching. So I slowed down, and we actually paused videos. We have just 2 more that we're publishing if we're, today, and then we're focused 110% on building this service out where we create blog and video content for personal brands and then distribute it so we can help other people grow their mailing list, get more leads, and have more visibility and credibility online.
Yeah.
Right. So you help people grow their list as well. That's part of the service that you offer, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. Our entry level, if you want to try it, we'll just write you 1 blog a month for as little. I think it's at $57, but that's bound to change. This is a new service. We're collecting a lot of feedback, and then it's our pro version where you're really going to start seeing some results with your mailing list because we're distributing it that all across these different websites, industry specific, based on what type of space your startup is in if you're an entrepreneur, and it's a newer service, so we're collecting a lot of feedback. But entry level is $57 as of today.
Right, that's a great offering to help businesses to grow their list, because that's something that's really important for any business to be able to grow their list. And in terms, you clearly know your stuff here, Matt. In terms of who inspired you in terms of what you do?
Wow, I had a little bit of inspiration before launching the video series, but I'm not kidding when I tell you it comes down to networking. The people that I've met, and by the way, one thing I don't think I mentioned earlier is I maxed out $85,000 on credit card debt during my real estate company.
Wow.
I could only pay myself $300 a month for over the first 12 months. So I was maxing out credit cards while using my cash to pay contractors and try to acquire more properties. So I thought I had some pretty good inspiration to pull that up, but wow, that's nothing. Compared to the people that I've talked to on the video series, they are trying everything they possibly can, unless it does one of three things. If it puts you in the cemetery, the hospital, or jail, those are things you don't risk as an entrepreneur.
Sure,
but
absolutely.
all kinds of financial things that we're trained to not risk, they're risking all of that and more. You know, they're closing huge deals without even having the staff to execute on these contracts because, you know, you'll only get the feedback from the customer faster. Now that's not the way to a sustainable business. But when you're getting started, your problem is figuring out how you're going to put food on the table for yourself without your salary position when you quit your job to start your company. Yeah. And then after that, you got to figure out how to grow enough to keep putting food on the table for yourself while hiring other people full time. That's $2,500 for a $30,000 salary, and trust me, it's hard to find someone who will work for that little out here in Colorado in the States. So, you know, just think about that. They're doing $85,000 in credit card debt's a joke. It's not. That's barely two people's salaries. like they've done crazy things. I'll let them share it with you, or you can check out the videos. Some of them talk about it in the videos, and you drop your jaws on the things they do. And I think that's where my inspirations come from. You know, you can really tell how serious someone is about their passion based off how reckless they've acted on it financially.
Yeah, it's about how much they're prepared to pay the price, isn't it?
Absolutely, and if you see someone doing a lot to try to make a dream come true, my gosh, you're going to trust them a lot more than if it's just a side project that they aren't willing to invest that much money or time into.
Matt, where can we go to get these videos?
Just handshakin.com is my website. That's Handshakin without the G. Or if you just search Handshakin Video Series, the name of the company will pop up on YouTube or on Google. And we'd love feedback. You know, let me know. We've only published about just over 30 of the 65 interviews that we've shot, but again, there's 5 videos per interviews, at least the newer ones. And you know, tweet me directly if you have any feedback. My username's the same thing, just Handshakin on both Twitter and Snapchat without the G.
Excellent, excellent. And in terms of books, what books have you read, Matt, that you would recommend to business owners and leaders?
Well, I think you guys will be glad to hear. I'm more of a podcast guy, but I've listened to a few audiobooks recently. I most recently listened to good old Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Work Week. Yeah. That is a classic. Every entrepreneur's gotta read it or listen to it. I think one of the books that overlaps the strongest with my video series that people are always bringing up to me is Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Yeah. You know, in that book he says there's so many people in this world that are self-serving that if you can just be selfless and serve others, the competition's low. You can meet anyone you want. You can do anything you want. But it is expensive, both time and money-wise, to do that. It takes discipline.
Yeah. How to Win Friends and Influence People. How old is that book? That book must be 40, 50 years, if not more, actually.
I think it's about 8 decades old, eight or so. And it's just crazy that even in the technology era that we're in today, it totally applies.
Yeah. Excellent. So, 4-Hour Work Week, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Anything else?
I think I just stick with those two. 4-Hour Work Week if you're into new techie stuff. How to Win Friends and Influence People if you really want to get down to the historical art and psychology of networking.
Awesome. And Matt, you mentioned some of the debt you had in the past. Can you tell us a bit more about what you did to turn things around? How do you, even now, what do you do to grow your business? What are some things that work really well for you that you'd recommend that any other business owner who wants to get results quickly should look at and at least test?
You know, it comes down to just trying something today. The biggest problem that entrepreneurs have is indecisiveness. It's important to make a decision and write it out today. Literally, after you listen to us talking right now, go and execute on something. Make a decision. Go and even if it's the wrong decision, that's much better than it being the wrong decision. As long as you're not risking what? You can risk anything except 3 things. You guys remember that, right?
Yeah. Prison, legality.
Prison, jail, and death.
Okay.
Yes. Aside from that, you can risk anything, and most wrong decisions aren't going to get you there. If they are, you might not want to risk them. But if they're not, you need to make a decision if you're going to reach entrepreneurial success.
Yeah.
Even if it's the wrong one. If you know it's the wrong one, that's just one more thing you can X off and not pursue. And sometimes as an entrepreneur, you have to make 3 wrong decisions before you make the right one.
Brilliant. So the wrong decision is better than no decision, right?
Big time.
Awesome.
That is awesome. Excellent.
And what about breakthroughs? What's been, if you look back over the last sort of 12 months in your business, what's been the biggest breakthrough moment? Something that you've done that's worked really well for you?
Hiring my first full-time employee was a big jump. I mean, every entrepreneur makes that decision at a different time, and it can be very scary, especially when I'm a bootstrapped single founder. I don't have other people putting money into this business. I don't have other investment with this business. Now, I did sell off part of my real estate, so I wasn't fresh out of college without much savings. But that was a big decision, and I would encourage entrepreneurs to really examine when you're going to do that, because it changed my business and it made me a lot more humble. I learned a lot from it, and it was a powerful experience. Whether no matter what, you got to do that at some point, and it's really scary to tell someone else you're going to put food on the table for them every month for the foreseeable future. But it can be you have to at some point if you're going to grow a business, right?
Yeah. So you said, it's interesting what you said there. You learned a lot from it. What was the sort of key lessons for you, Matt?
From hiring my first full-time employee? I think the humility aspect was really big. Oftentimes I feel like when people get interested in entrepreneurship, or when they quit their job and they start building something, sometimes that process can be emotionally distressing, especially if you're coming from like many of my friends who have come from corporate America. They've quit their job, and all of their friends are still getting paid a salary, and they just quit their salary, and they are basically unemployed unless they choose to call themselves the founder of their startup. But no one's going to believe that unless they join a community, right? Back to community, like we were talking about. If you join an entrepreneurial community, you'll find out that, hey, that's how most people start out. They're basically unemployed, but they're not going to call themselves that. That's disrespectful to their idea, which is the most important thing to them. So anyway, with where I was going with this is, you have to. Can you ask me that question again? I'll try to make it a little bit more concise.
Well, just about the lessons that you learned about when you hired your first full-time person.
Yes. When you quit your corporate America job, sometimes you grow resistant, and you grow anti 9-to-5 and anti-salary, and you push away the fact that some people work and get consistent paychecks, and that is all right. I can tell an aspiring entrepreneur from a seasoned entrepreneur instantly when they start telling me about, so and so is an entrepreneur. Well, heck no. For the first employees of startups are always very entrepreneurial. They're oftentimes taking huge pay cuts, and they're taking risks, and they'll probably start their own startup one day, or they're at least finding out they're passionate a lot more than people who are just working for the biggest salary. Because if you chase the money, that's when I interviewed billionaire Kimball Musk, who sits on the board of PayPal, SpaceX, Tesla. He said the one mistake he made was consistently aligned. Every mistake he made was consistently aligned with when he was chasing the money. You have to chase passion first. No matter how much money you make, that's not going to convince other people to take action. But the more you chase your passion, the more you give up your time and money for your passion, that's going to convince a lot more people to take action.
Yeah, and that's a real difficult one, isn't it, for an entrepreneur not to chase the money sometimes. But when things are tight at the beginning. But yeah, I've certainly found that with my clients. Those clients that have chased the money have invariably lived to regret it. And often it means things like working with clients they really don't want to work with. But it's like, hey, listen, this guy's going to pay me X, Y, Z. So, and I'm making the decisions based on the client paying the money, rather than if it's the right client to work with. And another example of chasing the money.
Big time. You nailed it.
Yeah, and by the way, I've done it as well. I hate to admit it, but when I first set out, I did it as well, and I chased the money, and you do live to regret it.
Yeah, it's kind of like a short-term gain, and sometimes you do have to. Sometimes you might feel like you have to,
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's ever the right or wrong decision. That's for every entrepreneur to decide on their own, which is, you have to decide your own ethics and culture and values. But sometimes, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think although sometimes, logically you do it for the short-term game, I think if you look at it long-term, it always ends up costing you more than it makes you.
Agreed. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that as well, actually, Drew. Yeah, really good point there.
I would always advise against it. And I think sometimes when you make that decision not to chase the money, so there's been times in my business, Terry, I know you as well, where you've let go of clients that you perhaps haven't enjoyed working with, or you've turned business away. It's almost it's liberating in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you almost feel like you've moved to the next level. Once you let go of that attachment to the money, again, and you get back to your passion, you almost feel like you've had a big mental breakthrough, a big mental breakthrough.
Yeah, that's huge. To be able to turn down the money has surprisingly beneficial effects, right? Especially long term, like we were mentioning. If you're just taking any client you can, you're just always going to be running for the next client. But once you start to say no to a few clients, that really raises your demand, because now that client wants to work with you even more. People always want what they can't have.
Exactly.
Yeah, so true that is. Yeah, absolutely. This has been awesome, Matt. Matt, where can our listeners go to find out more about you and your business?
Yeah, so we talked about the videos, the Handshakin video series. If you're looking for content for your personal brand, I'd love to just give you some pointers. Tweet me or send me a Snapchat. Both my handles are Handshakin without the G. And of course, if you want to give us any feedback on our service, I mentioned it's new, so any feedback on if you understand it or if you think something else would be helpful, we are all ears and always listening to our clients.
Excellent. Matt, that's been fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Anything else you want to ask, Drew?
One final question. You've sort of interviewed a lot of really successful entrepreneurs and business owners, and I know it might be hard to sort of whittle it down to just one, but what's the best piece of advice or something that someone said that you've just taken away and thought, wow, that's really powerful and it's had the biggest impact on you?
Yeah, to put it in one sentence, it's paying it forward. It's giving to others without expectation. That's by far the number one commonality that all these people have. And the one thing that you might find really interesting is the more wealthy the guests are that I interview, the even stronger that ties in. Talking to someone worth $10 million who has, probably much more than several full-time employees, they're going to be like, yeah, you definitely got to sit down and help other entrepreneurs with their startup. But then the first time I interviewed a billionaire, he said, you know what, Matt, people just need to pay it forward. When you're driving on the road and you see a car broken down, you have to pull over right away, right now. You can't pass that car and say you'll do it next time. You have to make the decision to pull over and help someone right away. And that was the first time I kind of heard the pay it forward outside of the startup and entrepreneurial space. And I realized, wow, this guy has a couple more zeros to his network than some of these other people I've interviewed. And he's saying, help this person on the road. He didn't even say the word startup or entrepreneur. And I was just, because the benefits of helping everyone, whether you have an idea or not of how they could work with you one day, is important and has benefits that you can't measure, but are immense and much greater than dollars. You can't measure the ROI of networking because sometimes it'll, I don't know how to put it, but because you can't measure it. But sometimes it'll push you to, more than just your goals. Sometimes it will, make you a billionaire, like some of my past guests can attest to. There's just all types of benefits that you can't measure, and because they're not all monetary, because that's not the most important thing to chase.
Yeah.
Right, because a lot what you talked about there is like a mindset shift.
Big time.
And financial gain. It's about shifting your mindset and the way you think about things, the way you behave, and that is what eventually leads to the financial gain. But yeah, you can't directly attribute it to that.
Yeah, that's right. And what I really like about the billionaire I interviewed who said that was John Paul DeJoria. He's the founder of Patron and Paul Mitchell Hair Products. And I think the thing that's great is you have to take action now. You have to pull over and help that car before your car passes it on the highway. And so that's the takeaway I'd want to leave your listeners with is take action today. Like we talked about, even if it's the wrong decision, it's okay. It's better than not making a decision. It's better than driving saying you'll help them next time. pull over and figure out a way to help them. And if you pull over and they need a new head gasket and you only know how to change a tire, that's fine. But then that's one more thing that you'll learn, and one more contact you've made, and you have no idea who that person is and how they'll help you in the next year or 10 years.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's some awesome stuff there. Absolutely awesome.
Matt, thanks for coming on the show. It's been, again, you shared some absolute gems with us there. It's been really good speaking with you. Again, Terry, thanks for your input as well.
Not at all, Rich.
I will speak with you soon. Until then, take care, take action, and be relentless.